We're still excited.
I'm excited.
Yeah, because next up is a very interesting talk. So we've been talking a lot about programming, but this next talk by Athena will actually be about VI Write, which is writing, editing, and world building in Vim, actually about Prose. Prime, could you tell us a little bit more about the next speaker?
So, just so everyone knows, Athena is a novelist and entrepreneur with a passion for open source technology. His debut novel, First Utterance, won Sri Lanka's prestigious National Literary Award. He is currently working on a second novel and on his startup, Marajan Studios?
Marajan
Studios?
Say it in just a fun way, like you like to say things.
I always go Marajan.
Yeah.
Marajan.
I like it. Sounds awfully close to Maria when you say it like that.
Maria. That's actually what I do all the time. I just want everything to be
all
Maria.
The words just eventually meld into Maria. Anyways, let's head on over and learn some about writing prose with Vim.
Hi everyone. Okay. Hi. Okay, I'm live. Can you just let me know if you can hear and see me? Just a little feedback, making sure that I can be heard. Hello? Can I be heard? Okay, I'm assuming I can be heard, right? All right. Yes. Okay. Fantastic. All right. So my name is Dina. Thank you so much for that really kind introduction from TJ and Prime. Just a couple of notes before I start. My webcam, I'm not a streamer, so my webcam is right above my keyboard. So you're going to see my fingers float around like this. I'm sorry about that. I apologize on that front. Right. I am going to speak to you about how I use Vim for writing, editing, and world building at the speed of thought. Firstly, I am a novelist, as Primogen and TJ mentioned. My fiction works in the intersection between magic realism and science fiction, right? So it's probably no surprise that I'm drawn to Vim in the first place. My first novel was published in 2016 with a workflow that's very different to the workflow that I'm following right now for my second novel. I want to, so with this presentation, what I want to do is kind of explore what a writer's workflow is and how my workflow almost changed overnight thanks to Vim. So I'm just going to have some notes here just to make sure that I'm not going out of scope. Right. So this presentation is divided into 3 parts. The first part is about my workflow before I had Vim in my life, and the workflow that essentially led to the publication of First Utterance. The next one is how that same workflow that helped me, write First Utterance was completely not optimized for the second book, and I'll explain to you why that was the case. And thirdly, I'm going to show you how the workflow has changed, almost overnight since I got Vim/NeoVim. Right. With that said, before, just some context. I'm not a pen and paper person, right? So, ever since I became a writer, I've tried to have this habit of having a notebook and a pen, but my handwriting is bad and I lose my stationery. So I've always had to have digital tools because the chances of me losing my digital tools are far less. This is, when I say BV, it's my before Vim writing toolkit. And as you can see, there's the whole range of writing tools, some from the conventional to some ridiculous/unorthodox. But I'm going to take you through how I use this workflow over time. And to do that, I had to kind of take you back to 2003 in Sri Lanka. Why 2003 is because that is when I was first paid to be a writer. But before that, I've been writing fiction all my life. So, but it was in 2003 that I got my first writing job. So, this was my workflow between 2003 and 2010. As ridiculous as it may sound, SMS was my primary scratch pad of sorts. So imagine I would be, commuting to work or commuting back home, or I'd be asleep and suddenly, inspiration strikes. How do I keep track of those notes? So what I used to do between 2003 and 2010 was I would send myself these long text messages. Sometimes almost 20 text messages to myself. And if you recall, SMS had a character limit of 160 characters. So these are really long text messages, right? So SMS essentially served as a sort of scratch pad. And I would say if I had sent it to myself as 20 text messages, then I would exhaustively copy it back into Notepad. Now you're asking me right now, why Notepad? Because Notepad was the most distraction-free writing environment I have. Until I came across Vim, I've never seen a more distraction-free writing environment, and I loved it for that. So it was, if I was on the computer, the scratchpad was my Notepad. If I was away from the computer, my scratchpad was SMS, and that's how I kind of. So imagine I would write it on the SMS, I would text it to myself, then I would exhaustively copy it onto my Notepad, work on it for a bit until the limitations of Notepad kind of came to the forefront. And some of the limitations were, like ordinary things like spell check, being able to scroll efficiently. So at that point, usually around 1,000 words or so is when Notepad would be pretty much useless after a point, and then I would reluctantly have to move it to a document, word processor rather, and I would work on this word processor for a while until I was satisfied with the draft, and then I would kind of email it to myself. Essentially, at this point, Gmail became both a storage as well as a sort of like a very, very primitive version control of sorts. But then around 2010, this process changed, and these changes happened because of changes outside my, outside in the world itself. For one thing, the smartphone had arrived. In Sri Lanka, we had finally got consumer broadband. So the combination of the two meant I suddenly had my Gmail app in my phone in my pocket. So which meant immediately I could replace SMS and I could use Gmail as my first scratchpad, which is what I was doing for a long time. And this made, like, if I was writing a long note, whether it's a story idea, whether it's dialogue between two characters, whether it is like character profiles or so on and so forth, I would write that on Gmail, and then I would basically work on it on Notepad for a while, easy to copy and paste it on Notepad, and then once the limitations of Notepad came to the forefront, I would move it to the word processor and continue working with the manuscript for a while until I was done. At this point, of course, in 2010, I had come across something called Dropbox, which allowed for storage, cloud storage, which meant for the first time I had access to my files across my devices. Now, this was mind-blowing for me, because it meant I didn't, some parts of my writing environment were no longer bound to one device. It was available on the cloud, which was great. And this workflow was what allowed me to write, edit, and publish first utterance. But and I can show you. So at this point, the Gmail served two purposes. It was it was at first a scratchpad, but it was also that version control, and I can prove that to you with this next screenshot. What you're looking at right now is my email inbox with the label first utterance. The lowermost email that you're looking at right now is from 2011. That's essentially when I first started writing first utterance. The topmost email is from 2015. This is when the manuscript had been edited and worked with my editor, and I was passing it on to art directors to get the book ready for publishing and printing. In between this 4-year period, what you also see is a 18 email conversation thread with my editor, Marissa, during which the manuscript went from its raw form to its final form. This version control was pretty great. But by around just for context, I had finished writing first utterance by 2012, but the editing and the getting it ready took a lot longer than that. So by the time I had finished first utterance around 2012, I started working on my second book, the title of which is not necessary right now. But as soon as I started working on the second book, I realized that there was going to be some issues. And if it's not apparent in this screenshot what those issues are, let me point them out to you. The first is the sheer number of file types that are there. There is a doc format, there is a text format, there is PDF, which already means that there are 3 different application windows crowding up my workspace. And once again, I don't think Windows had like virtual workspaces at that point in time, so everything was just like in one place, and that really was annoying. This is not even counting the browser window which I need for the inevitable research. So that's one part of it. One part of it was the file, the bloat in directory structure resulting from the different file types. The second was in terms of file naming. In lieu of actual granular version control, I took to using file naming standards that would allow me to have an idea of, okay, this was done on this day, this was done on this day. Essentially, in some ways, this was branching that you guys do when you all are, coding, but I didn't realize it was coding because I wasn't coding at that point in time, even hobbyist coding at that point in time. So there were three issues at this point. Now, what this meant, what the file names as well as the file types, all of that meant was when I came to write, I would have to open a bunch of different files. I would have to open a bunch of different applications. Now, if I was on the laptop, that's fine. It's still annoying, but it's fine. But if I'm on the phone, it's not fine because it's ridiculous, right? And it's at that point I realized I needed some change. But before I go into what that change was, I want to show you how I used to work with plain text before Vim. That is this screenshot that you see is the 4 foundational documents that I wrote before I started writing book 2. These screenshots inside these files rather, I have names of my characters. The reason I have names of my characters is because they are not Googleable. This is a fictional world where the characters, this happens on a Earth-like planet, but instead of having separate continents, it's one massive continent, right? So everything is made up. Everything is made up out of thin air, including my characters' names. So I can't Google them for proper spellings and so on and so forth. So I keep them in a plain text file. The other thing is, if it's a fictional world where it's not easy to relate it to the world that we live in, I need to be able to orient myself as well as my characters in this fictional world. So all of that detail is in these 4 files. It also has a lot of world building stuff in relation to a lot of the stuff that goes into the details behind world building, like the cultures, the fictional languages, the fictional cultures that kind of populate fantasy and science fiction. So I needed that in some sort of central location, and that's what these plain text files were there for. Now this is September 2019, September 2020. We were in the midst of the pandemic. I was in the midst of a sabbatical as well, which I had just started before the pandemic, because I was studying for my master's. And so I had plenty of time, right? And what does one do when you have plenty of time? You distro hop. And I hadn't distro hopped in before, but because I had so much time, I started distro hopping. And the result of those distro hoppings was that I ended up, I took my laptop out and said, one day I'm just going to wipe out Windows and I'm going to have Ubuntu on my machine. And it's when I had Ubuntu on my machine and I was working on a configuration file that, when I was trying to work on a configuration file rather, that I came across Vim. That was my first brush with Vim. And as anyone would tell you, the first encounter with Vim is one that most people kind of share. It is, in my case, it was, this configuration file is, I'm a Windows user for the last 20 years, right? So whenever something is stuck, my first reaction is to restart. That's Windows thing, right? So the first time it got stuck, I thought, okay, this configuration file is spoiled or it's damaged or something. So I restarted the machine. When it happened again, I thought it was this Vim that was at fault. Again, I restarted the machine. But the third time, I was a little smarter. I decided to Google away. And my first Google search was, how does one exit Vim rather? Having done that, I continued working on those configuration files, not knowing a lot of the shortcuts. I'm still using the arrow keys and stuff like a savage at that point. So this was around 8 months ago. So at 8 months ago, because like I said, I had a lot of time, I was doing a lot of hobbyist coding. And in those 2 months of my first encounter with Vim, I came to realize that there was a lot of developers were using Vim to write their documentation as well, essentially using Vim for Prose. And that kind of got me interested, because that was the first time I was like, okay, maybe I can actually move all of this to Vim. And about 2 months of frustration followed, because again, I'm not a tech person, I'm a novelist, so it takes what takes probably a day for some of y'all to figure out, it takes me a month, right? So I was running around online trying to find how to do this plugin manager when the penny dropped, and the penny dropped here. Shout out to Primogen. Thank you very much. I actually commented on that as well, saying this was the moment. I mean, when I look back right now, this was the moment that the penny dropped, right? And literally overnight after this day, I started moving little by little. I started moving my manuscripts onto Vim, and immediately I found my some of the issues that I had with regard to speed, with regard to portability, with regard to version control, with regard to opening multiple file types in one application window. All of those things almost got solved overnight. So, what does life look like after Vim? The first thing is my writing toolkit is now just Vim and Git. When I say Vim, I use three different syntaxes. I think that's what you call it, to aid my prose writing. I use Markdown, obviously, but I also use WimWiki, and I use org mode. Org mode almost made me switch to Emacs, but then I found Vim org was available, and as soon as that was there, that basically kind of made up my mind that it was going to be Vim. So it's basically Vim, a terminal, and Git that I use. And this is the same. These tools don't change no matter what device I'm on, no matter what operating system I'm on. They are the same. My writing workflow is no longer bound to a single device. I can write on my phone. I can write on my Mac OS. I can write on Linux. I can write on Windows. All of my my writing environment is no longer bound to one device. Like, I don't know if you guys are fans of Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee used to say the most adaptable element out there was water, because no matter where you pour water, water takes the shape of the container that it's in. And that's exactly what Vim had become for me. It was taking the shape of whatever device or whatever platform I was on. And with a combination of Git and GitHub, it suddenly made the process so much better, because now I had version control, and I had granular version control to the extent that most writers don't have. Like, I've shown some of the version control that I have to other writers, and it kind of blew their minds. Now, this process works really well right now, but I know there are going to be limitations with this process, because once I'm done with this manuscript, once I'm ready to take this to my editor, and it'll probably be about 6 to 8 months, maybe a year and a half of back and forth of molding that manuscript to that final form. At that point, I can't expect my editor, who is very much a traditional publishing industry person who works with the traditional tools that are available in publishing. She wouldn't change her work process and workflow for me. So I would have to essentially bring my manuscripts, all of them, into Microsoft Word, and before taking it towards the last mile of publication. That is something I have to kind of deal with. But before I go into the demo, I want to show you guys what this workflow looks like right now. Before I go into the demo, right? I'm going to speed this up. This is just me opening up my entire writing environment using Vim sessions. I know you guys don't like splits and its buffers that Primogen and a lot of you folks like, but for me, this is an incredible. Having the ability to split windows, especially, is a life changer. I also use Telescope. So TJ, I'm going to show. I know TJ didn't mean this for writers and fiction writers, but my God, this was mind blowing, because I thought this was like 20 years, 30 years, probably when I'm an old man, that's when technology like this would even be available, where I would just be able to like reference stuff at that speed. So thank you, TJ, for Telescope. This kind of circles back to what I was talking about with my mobile phone being my primary writing scratchpad. Sorry guys, give me a moment. Okay, so in this video, what you're seeing is me. I'm in the middle of a commute, and I had this inspiration struck at that moment. So immediately, and this was the first time I actually tried this, where I opened up my writing environment through Vim on Android through Termux. I continued working on the Scratchpad, working on the piece, and I actually git pushed it at the same time that I was getting down from my taxi, basically allowing me to have that, allowing me to capture moments of inspiration, but also capture them in a way where I know where it's going, what the version is, into what context and what project context it's going into. All of those details was very important. Right. So I'm done with these two parts of it. Now I'm going to go into the fun part, which is the demo. Right. And for that, I need the terminal. So give me a moment. Can you guys see the terminal? I hope that this is clear. If it's not clear, please let me know. I will keep track of the chat window in case there is something wrong here. Right. So I use Vim sessions to achieve a lot of the the ability to open up a bunch of files in one go. So I do that with this. Essentially, all my files that I need to start getting working on. I'm sorry, this is not supposed to be this big, but let me see if I can fix that. Okay. I'm going to just reduce this slightly so that it's a little more visually appealing. I hope this is all right. If it's not, please let me know. So what I have right now is immediately the 4 parts of my manual in one go. It's immediately there, and I can start working wherever I left off. One of the really cool things which Vim does, which kind of blew my mind, is when I open this session with all these files and tabs and splits associated with this session, it keeps the cursor for each file exactly where I left it. This is mind blowing. Because when I'm working on a Word document, like a document of sort, I have to scroll up and down close to 400 pages sometimes, and that is bad for my knees. It's also just bad for my workflow as well. So this is how I get to start working as soon as possible. When I do this, one of the things that this is actually feedback from my wife. She asked me, Dina, this is not distraction free. This is overwhelming. Well, how I achieve distraction free writing is I use Goyo. Goyo is great for having this level of visual control over what I'm looking at and what I'm working on. I also I use Goyo with a couple of inbuilt stuff, including relative numbers as well as line numbers and cursor lines, which makes it even better. Like this is a writing environment that I can work on without being disturbed. So that's a distraction-free writing environment. What about other things, right? Like one of the things that I want to kind of show you guys is, okay, let's see. So one of the issues that I have as a writer is, like I said, I'm creating fictional names that aren't Googleable for me to check on spellings. So one of the things that I do is autocomplete, right? So this is a character's name, so this creates characters' names immediately then and there. So it allows me to, again, write, edit, and world build at the speed of thought. The other thing that I want to touch on is granular version control, right? So again, it's connected to Git. So I would essentially say, okay, git add, git commit, vim conf, gpu, git push, and now I have this the exact commit as well as what I was trying to do, with a level of granular detail that I didn't have when I was working on my traditional tools that I've been using beforehand. Wait, what's this? No. What? Right. That's writing, and there's editing. Okay, so we finished writing. Now let's talk about editing. Editing is Vim's wheelhouse, right? So One of the ways, one of the coolest things about Vim's editing, sorry. Okay, one of the coolest things about Vim's editing functionality is the ability to open the same file in two different viewpoints. So this is the same file that you're seeing on both sides. It's been split where I can see the top of the file in one end and the bottom of the file in the other end. This allows me to quickly edit pieces without getting caught up in scrolling back and forth like a monkey at that point in time. So that is a huge thing. I'm not going to go into the basic Vim edits. You guys know that. I'll probably take that onto YouTube for a tutorial for conventional writers at some point, but I'm not going to touch on that. Right, now we're going to go into world building. And this bit is, let's see. So if you recall from what I was saying earlier, I have, because I'm building a series of books based on a fictional world. And just for context, my fictional world is one supercontinent. It's planet Earth, but it's one supercontinent, right? So I need to know where my characters are. So one of the ways that I do that is I have this. So before I go into that, these two files that you're seeing here, the file on the left-hand side is my Bible for the entire series that I'm working on. So this is still not complete. I've been moving a lot of the stuff that's there on other files into this, and I'm using org mode to make it a lot more easier to jump back and forth. I will go into this file a little later, but what I want to show you is this file here, which is on the right hand side. This file deals with the current book that I'm working on. So if I'm working on this book and I have, I forget certain details about characters. So what you're looking at right now is how I build my characters. Remember, I mentioned that there were 4 foundational plain text files that I worked on. One of the things that I work on is the characters and their names. One of the ways I do that is I have, I don't know if this is, the numbers that you see right next to each of those characters is the emotional point there that the character is at a certain point in the story. This allows me to know, okay, I am at this point in the story, where is this particular character emotionally at? This number, which is a representation of a scale of 1 to 5, tells me exactly where they are, and I can quickly go. The other thing is checking for spellings, checking for other stuff to do with characters as well. What else can I do? Oh, places. Again, fictional world, so I don't know some of the places that like I can't Google this stuff, right? So I have this in this document, which allows me to, again, using telescope. TJ, I know you didn't do this for us, but this is the most amazing thing that I have ever come across for being able to jump across these foundational text files that I need to jump across. The same applies here as well. This is the main Bible of sorts for the entire series, and here also I use telescope. So here again with Fuzzy Finder, everything is there. Like, for example, languages. Most of these are very much fictional languages. So I've created a glossary of words to do with the 2 or 3 fictional languages that are there. So these words are there. Once again, I'm not going to know this at the top of my mind, right? So I need to have a way to reference it back and forth. Yeah, that's pretty much how I use it. So thanks to this, now I can do this on my computer, whether my computer is running Linux, whether it's running Mac OS, whether it's running Windows, or on my phone, which is running Android. All of my writing environment is with me at all times. That pretty much brings me, I think, to the end of my talk. What I'd like to finish off is a big thank you to the organizing committee, especially Adam and Marcos, who've been working tirelessly, as well as Primogen and TJ for the incredible emceeing. Primogen for, thank you, because it was that video that just made the penny drop. TJ for telescope, the entire community of Vim plugin makers, Tim Pope and all these people just who made this thing that I didn't even realize was a thing in the first place. So thank you, and that pretty much ends my talk. If anyone has questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Hey Thina, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can.
Wow. I think undoubtedly we got the most claps and the most people saying that this was the best talk of the conference so far. So
What?
really, really great job.
Yeah,
Really
that was
excellent
incredible.
work. We loved it. Like,
Yeah.
I am not joking. You are bringing me very near to tears.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
man.
was awesome.
Seeing you use telescope, seeing you're talking about the Primogen and how he brought you into this community, and as some similar things happened to me as well. Chat is just going absolutely wild, spamming claps, very happy. So I just want to make sure you know how much we all loved the talk. We really, really loved it.
Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If nothing, I'll see you guys next year.
Well, first, obviously, question right away, link to the book, right?
Where is the
Yeah,
best place
it's
for
not-
us to buy it?
Yeah.
Sure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share it on the Twitch stream itself, or I'm going to send it to Adam, who could send it to the various communities. It's on Amazon Kindle, so it's not going to be hard to get hold of the book.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think people are just excited to hear more from you. So, more YouTube content. Maybe we may have to do another collab.
Yeah.
Maybe us or maybe.
Yeah. I would love that. I see. I actually sit through a lot of your long streams, even though I don't understand 90% of it. I just like pick out little things that would be useful for me, and I start incorporating that into my workflow. But yeah, I mean, I'm actually on the verge of starting a YouTube channel called the Open Writing Initiative, where I'm going to, again, like I said, it's based on the open source principles. So I want to have manuscripts of short stories and maybe others as well, open for people to take it. It's going to be under Creative Commons, so it's easy for people to take it and make ownership or collaborate on large novels. And the idea is, at some point, hopefully, we can have a community novel in the form of a community code base, or the equivalent of a community code base. Yeah. So we're trying to work. I'm trying to work for that. Maybe it's about 2-3 years behind, but hopefully it happens soon.
Yeah, well, I will definitely be following up with you on Discord after this. So we'll chat.
Yeah,
And we'll see some more,
man.
and hopefully, yeah, I think
Thank
the
you.
community would love that. A lot of people are very excited. Well,
Nice.
I think we got to move on to our.
That was awesome. That was great. I mean, can we get some more claps? More of them? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're a little giddy after that. I'd say.
Little emotional.
A little emotional. A lot right there. I mean, first off, for me, it's just crazy that I believe his bio said Sri Lanka. That's pretty much the polar opposite of where we are.
Yeah, like it's like if you dug through the center of the earth, I think you'd end up there, right?
Close enough, but a few time zones off. But nonetheless, like that was. I mean, how insane is that? That we're in a world such that we can interact with people that far away, and even. Oh my! Sorry, I'm a little blown away. Also, a little.
Also, he was vimming on his phone.
He was. I know.
Can we go back to vimming on the phone?
He was already way cooler than me.
I've never even attempted such a thing, and he's writing a book in NeoVim on his phone.
I know that man vims. Okay, that man vims.
Man vims.
All right, I am.
Wow. Okay,